Speaking of PlayStation Extra, Adam, I thought we could jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Um, like I said, there wasn't much going on, so we just wanted to get through that stuff real quick. But let's jump into the meat and potatoes of this. You've been playing PlayStation Extra. I have not, but the lists have come out now. It's been out for about a week or so. I thought we could jump in, and go through a couple of the games that are listed. Maybe come up with a list of our 10 games that we think you should check out or that we would recommend with PlayStation Extra. We're not going to do the premium tier. We're just going to focus on the extra tier.
Well, if we did the premium tier, we could pretty much do a top 10 because there's not much in it.
Fair enough. So we came up with 10 games each that we think you should check out. We'll give a quick little synopsis of what the game's about or why you should check it out. And yeah, I think we have two different approaches to this. Adam, did you want to quickly go over first how you made your list or what your criteria was for that?
Yeah, we definitely took two different approaches, I think. Mine was simply like, if you're like, because my argument last week was simple. If you have no access to gaming or you didn't have most of the PlayStation library coming in, the extra tier has so much stuff for you. So I wanted to go like your Kotaku, your IGN, your Games Radar route of straight up, these are just the 10 best games that I think you can play right now. I didn't go with like, oh, you've probably already done this, or oh, I did avoid the ones that are in the PlayStation Plus collection because they seem to bleed into that list, so I made sure to not touch those because they technically are already part of Essential. So I left that alone, but I came up with 10 games that, as far as I see it, with a pretty good variety too, of like the 10 de facto games that are based on my taste mostly, that I think people should take a look at.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of went a different route, and I kind of tried to avoid, not completely, there's some games I just wanted to put on the list just to make sure that they got some attention, but games that I thought either got mixed reviews that I thought that I thoroughly enjoyed, games that you may have overlooked, kind of being a niche area, just games that you might get lost in a list like this. And so I kind of want to go through and give them some highlights. There's a couple in here that, probably don't need the shout out, but I wanted to kind of put it on your radar so that you can think about it as well.
Oh, there'll be definitely a couple of games that, like, as soon as I get deeper into that library, I'll have some hidden gems for sure. Because just like Xbox, I found Crosscode on a whim. I found, oh my god, what was the name of that game that was just a really long thing about evading your taxes or something like that? Now I've forgotten, but it was a really funny game. But like, there are some real gems if you just download something that you have no idea what it is. And that's what I hope to do with Extra 2, is to dive into a few games that I would never touch without, the price tag. So we'll see. Yes. But yeah, for now I wanted to go just overall, and then probably one of these days, if I can get a good list of like, maybe when I get a good list of 5, we'll come back here and do something. I'll definitely have a hidden gem list at some point, though.
Sounds like we have a new segment coming up. Yeah, so we'll kind of go through, and like, these are just games that we've played that we can attest that are good. So, are you doing yours in any particular order, or you just have a list?
I'm doing from 10 up, so.
Oh, you've actually got a ranked list. Okay,
I did.
Okay, cool. We'll go that route then. So let's start with your number 10.
All right. This one's going to be surprising people because I said I didn't like it that much, but I know it's a game that needs to be on the list regardless. So I went with number 10 being Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut specifically, I think is the one that's on the extra tier that I saw. And again, like, I enjoyed most of it until the story just kind of bored me and I just kind of got tired of the open world. But like, if you're into samurai games, especially like open world, like hack and slash, like your Assassin's Creed stuff, and if you're coming new to PlayStation, like if you came over from Xbox and you came into this, that game, for literally just an extra few bucks on top of your membership, that is a steal. Absolute steal for most gamers. And most gamers love that game. Like, I think I might be one of the only people in my immediate friends list, also you as well, Kaylan, who actually, like, I might be the only one who didn't end up finishing it. Because it's just, for whatever reason, like, it was either burnout or just the story wasn't clicking. I think it might have been a bit of both. But
did you become the ghost?
As soon as, like, the second part of the world unlocked, it was mostly when I started dying down.
Oh, you missed the best part.
Probably.
Yeah, you become a ghost and it becomes an awesome stealth game. Cool. For me, I put this War of Mine.
That's a good one.
It's a game that I played. It's a really good one. It's sort of a side-scrolling strategy game. Basically, you're in like this war-torn country, and you have to make like decisions in order to kind of keep a little safe house going. Really bleak and really depressing, but really poignant. And the guys at that studio are guys and gals are really cool people who, support the cause and have been kind of doing a lot of charity work with what's going on in Ukraine. So
It's sort of
this
like a
war of mine
Last of Us game, like that kind of
of, yeah.
atmosphere, but it's more of a strategy survival, like keep yourself alive thing rather than
Yeah.
like combat.
Yeah, there's like there's very little combat, but it's like hard choices, and like there's things that you're like, oh, I like you'll have situations where you want to do something nice for someone, but you also have to look at like for the greater good and stuff. So really, really interesting game that if you haven't checked out, I would recommend.
There are definitely a lot of games that I've seen on that list that are, if you want to go for short short games with real emotion, there are quite a few that they put on that service.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, number 9, I went with one that I reviewed not too long ago on this channel, but Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that game is a fantastic addition. Definitely a bit of a gem that people kind of missed out on because I guess the stink of Avengers kind of put them off the trail for a little bit. I think also people watched that initial trailer and were a little bit unsure of it, whereas I looked at it and went, oh, I know this is going to be fun. So, again, did a good, the combat, I think we both described it, we both kind of, think the combat needed work, but I didn't think that that's what sold the game, whereas I really loved the way the characters were done, the storytelling was very good. They definitely had the very comical, lighthearted feel that series does. The music was a great touch, the soundtrack is fantastic, even the fake band that they created to go with Star-Lord.
So good.
It's so I still listen to it on the regular.
So good.
It's so good. And they do just a pretty good job overall of taking a license that generally most people don't know, but now they do through the movies and love, and just continue to move forward with it and kind of put a bit of a spin on it. And also bring in some more stuff that we didn't get to see before, like Fing Fang Foom and stuff like that.
Yeah, they definitely made it their own. I think the best part of that game is the characters and the dialogue. I think the combat, I would rank the things that I like, it'd be the characters and the dialogue. Second would be the combat. The combat's okay, but gets repetitive. And then the story. The story kind of, I don't know. I didn't find that the villain was that compelling or anything like that, but it's fine. It's a good game. It definitely is a good game.
I like the villain without spoiling anything, just because of the way that it was done towards that sympathetic villain, and also one that that you got to do something about. It's not just evil for sake of being evil. It's no, we got to help. We got to deal with this.
Yeah. My number 9 is Moving Out. This is a small couch co-op game in the vein of an Overcooked or something like that. What you are is you are a moving company, and so you have to move furniture for people out of their homes into the truck, and there's a shenanigans ensues. There's no sort of you could throw a couch through a window kind of thing. It's a quite funny game. It's a sort of a co-op physics style game. Really fun. Definitely one that you can play with your significant other, friends, and definitely have a moment of yelling at each other. So Moving Out would be my number 9.
Yeah, it's done by the same people who do Overcooked, and they always do fantastic with those games.
Is it? I thought it was someone else.
Yeah, it's the same team.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. Moving Out.
For me, number 8, I went a little bit different direction here. I went to the strategy sphere, and certainly when Marvel's Midnight Suns comes out, I'll be seeing how these guys do, but I put XCOM 2 at number 8. I think there is, at least in my opinion, no better strategy game out there. If you're not, I'm not talking in the vein of a Civ or a Total War. I'm talking more of just a turn-based strategy, almost like a Final Fantasy Tactics. XCOM is one of those games that's it's a genre that I don't play a lot of, but XCOM does it so well that I can't not love it. Mm-hmm. And the aesthetic is great. Obviously the aliens invading you, trying to take over. XCOM 1 was the invasion. Now XCOM 2 is they won, and now you're trying to take the world back. And they do so many improvements to it. They made the combat a lot more seamless, gave you a lot more abilities to work with. They gave you a lot more weaponry, a lot more research to do. They definitely do it to a point that no matter what difficulty you're playing on, even on easy, it can still be a handful, especially if you're a newer player, because there's so much you got to think about doing. And it's not just about just making sure you're overpowered in the battlefield, but you got to make sure that you're still keeping up with, making sure your airship's all good to go. Your spaceship is all ready to go. If your base is all set, you got to make sure that you're prepared to keep up with the aliens before they, create the giant death ray or whatever they're working on that's going to destroy the planet on you guys. So it's it's definitely a game that challenges you no matter what skill level you play at. And then obviously, as soon as you get better and better at the game, you can go in the harder difficulties and hate yourself, I guess. Especially with Iron Man mode, which is like, hey, you're going to autosave constantly and we're going to delete those autosaves. And if something happens, you can't change it. So I hope you don't get attached to people. And especially in XCOM, you really shouldn't, because XCOM soldiers can die real fast if you're not careful.
Didn't they let you make like characters that are like family and friends? Like you can make your own characters.
Oh, you can name them whatever you want. Like, so you could create you could create your loved one and be like, "What did you die from?" Oh, I kind of missed a 91% chance to shoot the snake at point blank range, and then she just grabbed you and squeezed you to death.
My number 8 is Valiant Hearts. This is a small Ubisoft art house kind of game.
You want to talk about the short emotional games?
Yeah. This is one I played back in like the mid 2010s, the mid teens, I guess. It's a short game. It takes place in World War I, and you have 4 characters, and you kind of see like their stories through the game. It's really cool. The art style is really neat. Fun game if you're into history, if you're into World War I. And it's not dark, like it's not.
No, but it's
grim.
pretty real.
Yeah, it doesn't sugarcoat it, but it's not grim. It takes it from a light perspective. But yeah, it's a good game with a good story. So Valiant Hearts.
Let's see, number 7. Probably the oldest game that I'll have on this list. I mean, technically it could have belonged in the premium category, but because it was a remaster, I put it up here. The only Final Fantasy game I'll put on this list, because the remakes still aren't there yet, the Final Fantasy remaster of 10 and 10-2. I think that if there's any JRPG you should be playing on the service, all the good ones aren't on this list yet, so 10 and 10-2 remaster was the best one I could come up with, because Persona's still missing there for reasons why I don't... Actually, I think Persona's on the... I don't think it's on the collection anymore. I think they took it off. But either way,
yeah, I don't think it ever. I don't know if it was.
Final Fantasy also might be 15. Mixing stuff up for all I know.
15 was on the collection. 15
is on the collection. Yeah. But like 10 and 10-2, I know a lot of people hate on 10-2, but 10 is fantastic, very beloved game in the Final Fantasy series. For a lot of fans, like the last bastion of a really good JRPG series for them. So it's definitely been it's been a struggle for 20 years. So at the very least, if you've never played a Final Fantasy game before, that's usually the one I direct people to, because 10 it's pretty easy to get a hold of in terms of, the story is not that crazy. The graphics are like that good enough blend of like, it's not too blocky, so it doesn't look ugly and old. And there's voice acting, so you do have the emotion to it. So, and the gameplay itself is fine. Like, it's actually a pretty easy game too. It's very easy from a skill level standpoint of approachment. So I think that's always the one that I try to point people to. Whereas, like, if you get into 15, it's a little more, like, hit A to win, like, combat-based. If you go to 12, it's pretty boring because you just kind of stand there and just watch the characters do stuff like it's an MMO. So unless you're into 14, I guess you could like it. But I think 10 has that good balance of being approachable, but still has enough depth of it because of it still being in the old-school turn-based combat.
Yeah, I definitely one worth checking out. I know that one's one that was pretty divisive for fans, though, right?
10, not that I remember. Like 10-2 only was just because it was like the first sequel that ever got given to a game, and people were pretty apprehensive about it. Mostly because, well, it was a game that was kind of designed for a female audience, and I'm sure a lot of guys didn't enjoy that. So, whereas I love the fuck out of that game, because that game decided to be like a lot more anime, and I'm down for more anime.
Yeah, for sure. For me, number 7, Sniper Elite 4. So staying with the military history kind of thing, I'm a big history fan, so these kind of games they get a little bit of an edge. Sniper Elite 4 is a really cool game. You are a sniper in World War II during the Italian campaign. And so what you do is you get dropped off into these open world levels. So once again, kind of like the Tomb Raider-esque scenario where you get this area to go play and explore, and you can stealth creep through it, and you're just taking out Nazis and Italian soldiers during the Italian campaign. And so clever ways of doing it, you're kind of creeping around, and you can kind of use your sniper rifle to trigger events, like you have to be cautious of sound, you have to be cautious of, when they're looking at you. So you might be waiting for an airplane to fly overhead, and then that's when you take your shot, or you're going to be next to a motor that's kind of popping as you take your shot. And so you have to time it for sound. And if you get on the higher level difficulties, you have to take into account wind speed, bullet drop, that kind of stuff. I'm not at that level, but it's a fun sniping stealth game that if you are looking for a stealth game, very loosely in the vein of something like a Splinter Cell, this might scratch that itch.
You can shoot people in the balls.
You can do that too. You get some X-ray kind of Mortal Kombat-esque X-ray kill shots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's number 7 is Sniper Elite 4. Sorry, go ahead.
Number 6 for me, started to get a little more fun again. South Park, there's a couple of these where I pair stuff because you can't do one without the other. So I put South Park Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole. Because I do think both of those games are way better than I think they had any business of being. They are so goddamn entertaining.
I put Stick of Truth as my next one as well, so I figure we can talk about these in general. But I skipped the Fractured But Whole. You can interchange them for either one. They're both great, but I find personally that Stick of Truth is the better of the two games.
It's a hard call. Like, I honestly would have to go back and replay both of them because there's been a lot of distance in between it. I think I would maybe lead Fracture But Whole just because they improved the combat more. They fleshed it out a bit. Yeah. So I could possibly lean in that direction. Although I think Stick of Truth probably has the edge in story by just a little bit. And also
what I would kind of...
It's really goes either way. Like, but both of them, like, do I even have to explain, like, why you should, like, it's a South Park RPG. Like, how is that not interesting to you? If you don't like RPGs, I guess that's the only thing that stops you. But, like, man, you know what you're walking into with South Park.
Yeah.
There's a level where you're in Canada and it goes, like, 16-bit. How can you not be interested?
It's so good. Yeah. So I'd say either one. But, yeah, my number 6 was South Park Stick of Truth. All right, was that your 6? Was that your...
Yeah, that was my 6. So I guess I might as well jump up to 5 then.
Yeah, were they? Oh, you put both 6?
Yeah, I put I honestly don't think there was any point in separating them.
Why can't you follow instructions, Adam?
Because I don't care. Look, I take the Barbosa level of things. It's like, look, the rules are more like guidelines, you know.
Fair enough. Sir, go ahead with your number 5.
Number 5, the only really off the board one that I probably will have here. I mean, it's not to say that's off the board. A lot of people liked it, but I think a lot of people would think of other games before this, but Celeste.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I thought was easily one of the best indie games I think I've played ever. Mm-hmm. And it's simply a very bare bones puzzle game, like puzzle platformer. And just because of like how calming it is, despite all the frustration it gives you, because some of those levels are so goddamn hard and so pinpoint accurate, but it feels so goddamn good even when you fail. So you kind of accept that. And also, like, it actually has like an okay story to go with it too. It's not just, can you beat this ridiculously pinpoint accurate hard level we threw in front of you? It's like, no, there's actually a bit of a emotional kind of like backstory to the whole thing. So that's definitely something people should check out. I mean, granted, you probably could just buy that game because it's not that expensive compared to some of the other ones we're putting on these lists, but hey.
For me, my number 5 is Ghost Runner. This is a first-person cyberpunk. I don't know how you'd call it.
It's like a first-person like ninja game. Like it's like a platformer meeting like hack and slash. That's like pretty hard too.
It's a very hardcore. It's like a very hard game in terms of like you die a lot in this game, but it's nice because it's got quick reloads. So like you are not waiting to reload. Like you died, you come right back. Levels are short. Usually they like if you can get through them, they're maybe 10 seconds long. They're not super drawn out. So, but it takes you a long time to get through it. You're kind of ricocheting bullets with your gun, with your sword. It's kind of like if you ever played Katana Zero, it's like that in first person. Really fun game. I don't think a lot of people picked it up just because it had some issues, and it is an intimidating game. It is a lot of fun though if you check it out. So
yeah, it's like Mirror's Edge and Super Hot combined with like Samurai or nuts like Samurai. I guess Samurai Ninja elements. Like it's very much like that kind of style.
Yes. Cool. All right, that's my number 5.
Number 4. Now we just get into like the high tier stuff. Number 4, Red Redemption 2. That's kind of a no brainer. I mean, if it's on the service, that's a top 5 game period in that generation. You know, you take Rockstar when it wasn't making like 10,000 different versions of GTA 5. You know, that was them at their best. Now, granted, even at their best, like Red Dead Redemption 2 still has faults, but it's so
100%.
damn good that you can kind of look past it because it's just so well done in terms of its story.
They made an artistic decision in that game in terms of going for that hyper realism that I wasn't a big fan of. Like I felt it went too realistic in terms of like you have to collect everything individually and there's emotion for everything, and like I didn't love that. But yeah, it has a great story. It definitely has that cowboy feel. It's a lot of fun, but yeah, there are some choices that were made that don't necessarily make it a bad game, but it just choices that
Yeah, if you're okay with handling like the lots of wait time while you like travel between places to get to the next mission, you're fine. Because every bit of major content, albeit like maybe 5 to 10% of the entire story campaign, is really well done, and the combat is fluid. It is perfectly put together.
Yeah, the gunplay is the best.
And for its time, like it was really, really well put together graphically too. Even on PS4, it ran amazingly well for the kind of graphic level it was pushing out. It was definitely a precursor to what we were going to start seeing with the PS5.
Yeah. All right, my number 4 is Overcooked 2. I am a huge Overcooked fan. It's one of the few games that I can easily convince my wife to play, but I can also quickly convince her not to play with me, simply because my Gordon Ramsay comes out, and we've had times where we've had to say, okay, we need to stop. We are saying things we are going to regret.
Why didn't you cook the meat? It's fucking raw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've had moments where we are saying things that we are going to regret, so we are going to stop here. But it's a lot of fun, especially like if you have a significant other or a friend that you want to play it and they're not necessarily the biggest video game people. It's very approachable and very easy to play, that like you can get someone on board to play without them having to know a lot of what to do. And it's just fun. Like it's a fun little game that, you do get frustrated and it sometimes can cause some stress and some conflict. But great game nonetheless. My wife and I platinumed this one and we bought all the expansion packs. It's a staple in our house.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely need to get a crew of friends to play that because it's one of those games that like you need a full group to make the chaos just absolutely insane in that game.
I find two is a good, like the
Two's
one
a good
gripe with
amount,
that.
but you got to
Two's
think that 4 is just an absolute dumpster fire.
Oh, two is I think almost too chaotic for me. But there are some levels that almost require you to have more people. Like it's designed that way.
I like chaos; it's fine.
Perfect. Well, then there you go.
Going further down here, we go to number 3. The last point that we get into the third party lineup before I finish off with the first party. At least I think so. Let me quickly yes, okay, I did. Okay. There's a part of me that's like, do I want to say that out loud? And then all of a sudden, number 2, here's Resident Evil or some, I don't know, some random shit. No. Number 3 was Control Ultimate Edition. That game is incredible. That like I was really nervous going into that game because I thought it's gonna be like a horror-esque, like mysterious, like thriller, like over the top, like crazy visually like game. And within like an hour, I'm like, oh, this is like Saints Row 4 when you're a superhero flying around the map and just throwing shit at people, except the atmosphere is so goddamn mysterious and cool.
Yeah.
And like visually, it's so well put together. Like whoever designed like the entire aesthetic of this game did amazing because it is so well done and unique. And again, like the voice acting in the story is almost doesn't matter because the gameplay is the star there because it's just so perfectly optimized. Like everything feels fantastic. You feel like a telekinetic god. Like this is what a Magneto game should look like, basically.
Yeah. It has the story wise it has a Kojima vibe to it where it's just like I have no idea what the hell is going on, but I'm having fun anyways. Like the gameplay carries that game. Like the way that they use the weapon is really neat. Flying around, just whipping stuff around is great. And there's a particular level that I mean we've talked about it before, but there's a level that when you get there, you know it.
Take control. That's all.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Number 3 for me was Everybody's Golf. This is another one that may have flown under the radar, but is a fantastic game. I'm kind of weirdly putting an asterisk on this because PlayStation was saying they were shutting down the servers on this, which I don't quite understand. So we'll see.
Well, they got
But
like 7 Hot Shots games on the service now, so
yeah. So Everybody's Golf is it's a golf game. Like, it is not something like What the Golf or something like that. It is a real golf game, but it's accessible to players. A lot of fun to play. My brother-in-law, excuse me, my brother-in-law and I have played this game together. We, jokingly say we've got a tee off, and like my sister and my wife are like, "You guys are going golfing?" And we're like, "No, we're just playing video games." And we'll play it, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of cool events there. It's a fun, easy, accessible game to play, and it was my first Hot Shots game, but I really like it. So
yeah, it's basically like their answer to Mario Golf.
Almost, but yes, yeah.
It
doesn't have
at least in that vein of like, it's not like the super realistic PGA Tour games. This is like a more like beginner friendly, approachable one that's not going to like demand you have to play like with the utmost of professionalism.
Yeah, it's not like Lee Carvello's putting challenge kind of thing. So.
No. But it's not Bone Storm either.
It is not Bone Storm either. Adam, you're number 2.
All right, so we're getting to the creme de la creme. Number 2, the complete edition of Horizon Zero Dawn. I think I don't need to speak too much about that. If you haven't gotten to Horizon yet, because obviously you're coming to this console fresh, you owe it to yourself. Horizon's one of the very first things you should be touching on that console. So, I mean, again, like, it's so crazy going back thinking about how nervous I was about that game because I thought it looked so amazing. But new IP always is like a hit or miss. It's either going to be so good or it's going to be so dull and boring. And I looked at that initially and went, man, this looks like it's going to be so cool. But I'm so worried it's going to fall flat on its ass. And then it came out, I'm like, okay, I love this world. I wish I could spend more time here. And the combat was really, really well done, albeit I didn't use all of it because I didn't care about things like tripcasters, but hey, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But like, the aesthetic, again, like similar to what Control was, like Horizon is such a unique looking game that it stands out on its own already. And story-wise, again, like a lot of the games that we've talked about, like, it's hit or miss. Like, some people really attach to the story, some people didn't as much. It was more just the entire world that they love being in. I think Horizon is just like Sony at its best, showing like it's not just all about, our 25-year-old franchise that we're going to keep digging out one more time to kind of make a quick buck here. Whereas they went, hey, we got some pretty crazy ideas if you want to take a shot at us.
Yeah. Definitely recommend Horizon Zero Dawn. It's one of my favorite games. I've got the collector's editions for both games actually here. So, really fun game that I really like. Both of them platinum. Definitely recommend. My number 2 is Days Gone. This is probably one of the bigger Sony first-party titles, but it's one that I feel like got a bit of a bum rap from reviews, and it may have turned people off from trying it out, but it is a really good game. The biggest gripe I think it has is that it's too long in the tooth. Both the story drags on quite a bit, and it takes a while for you to get to the point where you are getting to the meat and potatoes of that game in terms of going after the hordes and stuff. But it's got some really neat mechanics. Like you're driving around on your motorcycle and like you get invested in that bike and you're trying to find parts for it. You're trying to find gas for it. Like, it's really cool. I really like that game. The environment's really neat. I feel like that was one of those games that needed a little bit of editing in terms of story and just kind of shortening it down. One of the problems I think that reviewers had is that when they were doing it, it's a very, very long game that just has several times where you're like, oh, we're wrapping up, and it just keeps going. And I think that put a sour taste, but it's got some really neat mechanics, some really fun story. It's a cool environment, cool world. Little cringy on the dialogue a little bit, but I think that's a game that the more people that play it, it gets more and more positive feedback. Like, it's one that people get pleasantly surprised by. So I would definitely check out Days Gone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have my qualms with it, but I know people like it. Some people didn't. It did obviously pretty well for PC, so clearly there was an audience there for it. So yeah, it's something to check out. My number 1, I mean, I've already talked about the first party lineup. I mean, there are other games that could have fallen in this place, but Uncharted's on the PlayStation Plus collection. God of War is on the PlayStation Plus collection, so they don't count. But what isn't there And again, it's another pairing: Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. You can't go wrong with that.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
You know, when we had a history too of like so many tie-in games, movie tie-in, show tie-in, like so many of them were just like C-level games constantly.
Spider-Man had a pretty good track record for those tie-in games. Like of all the tie-ins.
Yeah, there was a period for a while that it wasn't.
Think of the IPs that we've had that have had crappy tie-in games. Spider-Man, I'd say, would probably be one of the more consistent. Like if you had to say like which one would you roll the dice on, I'd say Spider-Man.
Yeah, and there was still some rough stuff after like Spider-Man 2. And then there was a rough patch of like, they're not Iron Man bad, but they could be worse.
Shattered Dimensions was pretty good, wasn't it?
I honestly never liked any of those like off-brand ones. Those never really went well for me. Well, obviously going back to our top one here now with Spider-Man and Miles Morales, like both of those games, tremendous, absolutely tremendous. If you were ever worried about a Marvel sponsored video game having like a little bit less in the storyline, they made that pretty clear in the first game that was not going to be a problem. They did a fantastic job with that story. In fact, they basically at the end of the game said, nothing's off the table. Hope you guys are ready because we ain't pulling punches if we need to. And with Miles Morales, they tackle even further, you know, taking a little bit more of a racial look at things and obviously taking, you know, an interesting look with characters that we normally don't get to take a look at because they aren't getting advertised nearly as much as obviously you would with Peter Parker and the usual villains. And everything, like, I honestly don't have much to say about that game that's negative. Like, some of the complaints I've seen friends talk about is like, oh, well, some of the side quests are a little bit unnecessary. I'm like, yes, but you don't have to do them, so that's fine. Like, the main quest line itself, really good. The combat, really good. I have no problem traveling in the open world from point to point because web slinging in that game is so goddamn satisfying to the point that my girlfriend sat down for like 20 minutes straight and just web slinging. Didn't even want to do the story because she just enjoyed it that much because it feels so good. Just going through the city from like high-rise buildings and diving all the way down and just swooping right back up again. Like, they did such a fantastic job to pull the old IGN card of making you feel like you're Spider-Man.
Except Screwball. Screwball sucked.
You take what you get.
No, she was annoying. I also felt that the DLC for Spider-Man wasn't super amazing either. Like, I felt that was a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, but thankfully, you don't got to pay for it here, so
it was a great game. No, like a great game, but yeah, just putting those grapes on that one. For me, number one may not be as much of an obscure pick as other ones, but I just wanted to make sure that it gets some love because I think some people may have overlooked it. And that's the 2016 Doom. That game is amazing. There are so many ways to describe it. I've heard it described as you are the final boss and the NPCs and the enemies are the heroes trying to defeat you. And it is awesome. It is the best soundtrack or best metal album that comes with a free game. The way I describe it to friends, it is an orchestra of death and you are the conductor and it is amazing. Just going in there, ripping and tearing. It's so much fun. You go on that is a full true power fantasy in the purest sense. So yeah, Doom 2016, worth checking out. Adam, wrapping up this, I just had a fun little idea. Is there a game on the list that you haven't played but you maybe want to put like a maybe one that you're gonna get to? For me, the one that stands out, there's a game called Foreclosed, I think. Kind of a cyberpunk-esque comic book game. It's one of those I've heard mixed things, but it might be worth checking out. So I'm not endorsing it. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but it might be one that at least has my attention in terms of what it does. Is there one that stands out for you?
Probably Death Stranding, because that's the game that I'm like, man, I have no idea if I'm going to love or hate this one. So thankfully, with it being on the service, it gives me a chance to try something that I normally wouldn't. I mean, there's other ones out there, like currently I'm playing Mafia Definitive Edition. That will probably be a review for next week, so I've gotten the chance to go through that. Demon Souls, like I said earlier at the top of the show, is something I'm going to take a look at. I'm trying to think, what was the other one that I got recently? Oh, The Artful Escape. I definitely am looking forward to, because that was a big thing that a lot of people said was one of the better indie games of that year. I think it was from last year.
Yes, that's correct.
So there's one more. Oh, Returnal, duh. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a few games already that I'm ready to dive into, and there's still a bunch down the line that as soon as I keep peeking a little bit more, and obviously Stray, when that gets released day one, there's definitely going to be some stuff that I'm very curious to see how it's going to go. And much like Game Pass, there's going to be a few games that I'm going to be like, okay, I don't know what you are, but let's see a trailer of you. Oh, that actually looks kind of neat. Let's try that. Oh my god, this game is awesome. So I'm hoping we get some of those too. I just don't know what they are yet.